Say, let's take a look at what's going on in that old WBD bidding war. Oh yeah, it's still going on. What's this? Trump to the rescue, saving Warner Brothers for Paramount over woke Netflix? I don't know, could be. Well, a new twist. Well, kind of, sort of. Some of these elements were kind of obvious from the get-go. Somewhat, anyway, are suspected. But anyway, a new twist in the high-stakes bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery is making headlines, and this time it involves none other than President Donald Trump. Well, it has for some time again. While the president has distanced himself from the sale, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner even backed down. That's right. Trump now seems to have fully aligned with Paramount against Netflix. According to a recent New York Post report by Charles Gasparino, Paramount Skydance has moved to Plan D for Donald in its bid to derail Netflix's so-called winning offer for Warner Brothers Discovery. After multiple failed strategies, including an all-cash $30 share offer, a potential hostile takeover, and even threatening litigation, the Ellison-backed studio is now playing the long game. Insiders for the site say they're focused on hammering home the enormous regulatory risks surrounding the Netflix WBD merger, hoping the deal collapses under its own weight. And now they may have found their biggest ally yet, President Trump. So here you have Trump's truth post, and it's this article talking about stop the Netflix cultural takeover. So, yeah, it's a problem because there's a lot of woke crap on Netflix, and if they become the dominant source for all, popular culture entertainment media, then, and they kind of are, more than others, and then they're going to absorb HBO Max and all that. So, there's reason for concern. See? Look at that look he's giving the logo of Netflix. No. Anyway, Trump posted a One American News article on Truth Social titled, Stop the Netflix Cultural Takeover, Slamming the Deal as an Ideological Power Grab by a woke media monopoly. The article accuses Netflix of seeking to consolidate unprecedented cultural power by acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery, home to iconic brands like DC Comics, HBO, and Harry Potter. Yeah. More gender swaps, race swaps, Superman and Batman coming out of the closet, all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know, the Flash becomes trans, something, Anyway, the message: if Netflix controls these assets, it could become the most dominant cultural gatekeeper in history, able to rewrite characters, retell history, redefine social norms, and control which ideas reach audiences. Well, so far, that path hasn't worked, but I guess they figure we're the only game in town, Now it'll work. The woke era has tried so many ways to do this, and they bled money and audiences. Yeah. I mean, if you're a shareholder in this, you what? Yeah. Anyway, Trump's repost was seen by many as an endorsement of Paramount Skydance's rival bid and a warning shot at regulators. It also follows Netflix's biggest show, Stranger Things, going completely woke in its final season. Well, I differ on that. Yes, there's gay storylines in it. And yes, they made a big deal about a storyline like it was some big revelation of a character that he's gay when it was well established already. within the show before you got to the final season. The real big revelation was part of the lore and story that, oh, he's got these special powers as well and that sort of thing. But it's overshadowed by that. And the way they dumped it in there, yes, for the message, it takes away from the story itself, which wasn't that great. Stranger Things just didn't have enough material to last as long as it did. But it had the fandom, and people were, intrigued by the aesthetics of it and everything. And the first season is great, But nevertheless, once you get in to that, and you dump that in there for the same old reason as shielding. So, yeah, kind of, sort of. It's if you're complaining about how bad the final season of Stranger Things is, then you're obviously a homophobe. So that's why things like that are exploited for it to some extent. And so, true to form, that template of television and filmmaking, which has been played out through the woke era, to the Hollywood's detriment, appeared right there at this late hour, still doing that. But I think it speaks more to, I don't know what to do. We don't have a story. Yeah. And then, hey, guess what? The guy we were telling you was gay, he's gay, and it's, yeah. So anyway, absolutely woke now, just really lazy and bad. Yeah. They just had nothing. But, I see why people would assess it as such. Anyway, this aligns perfectly with what the Ellisons and Redbird Capital have been arguing for months. The Netflix WBD deal is a regulatory nightmare waiting to happen. Well, just because Netflix is woke doesn't violate any regulatory, it means their dominance. And that becomes into monopolist territory. Of where they're the only game in town. And, of course, beyond just wokeness, which is true, would be a serious issue. But so would just a monopoly in any iteration. So Netflix is offering $27.75 per share and a mix of stock and cash for Warner Brothers Studio and HBO Max, with an extra $3 per share tied to a risky cable spinoff, CNN, TNT, Discovery. But that $3 is looking more like a pipe dream, as investors balk at the $15 billion debt dumped onto the spinout. Yeah. Besides, $30 is more than $27. Anyway, meanwhile, Netflix has lost over $160 billion in market cap since the bidding war began, and skeptics question whether it can even afford the deal. The Ellisons are calling out the declining value of Netflix stock as another ticking time bomb for WBD shareholders. Yeah, they got to consider that, because again, the 27 payout is a mixture of cash, not in total, and stock. But as the stock is continuing to decline, how much trust can you put into that? Anyway, and that's before regulators, exactly, that's before the regulatory problems come into play. And that concerns Netflix's already dominance in streaming. They keep citing YouTube, but that doesn't really play into it. YouTube is an entity unto itself. But I don't think it's enough of an argument for them to bypass antitrust laws, especially when they're absorbing the number 3 streamer here. So, yeah, they're not blowing smoke. This is a problem for them. So, combining Netflix, number 1 in streaming, and WBD, number 3, could trigger an antitrust firestorm. Even Mario Gabelli, a longtime WBD investor, told Gasparino the deal is too convoluted and should be simplified, saying bluntly, cash is king. That's why he favors the Ellisons. All cash off. Yes. Even if the Ellisons fail with WBD, going forward and all that. Look, it's always a gamble, but you're going to get that cash. And if you feel not confident with any of these buyers, you can sell, at the right time, which might mean immediately. I don't know, but still between the two, So, Anyway, perhaps the most explosive claim is that WBD's board favored Netflix, not because of price, but because of politics. Well, I can't help but think that there's some shenanigans going on here. I would have thought that the personal deal for members of the board of Warner Brothers is better with Netflix. They've got some little extra going forward with the new company that's formed as a result of the merger, and that's good only for them, not for the shareholders at large. And I suspect there's something of that nature there. Whether the politics plays into it more, could be, but I would think it has a lot to do with that, more so than that. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that, politics does play a role. The writer of the OWN article was also interviewed by Congressman Matt Gaetz on his show and accused Warner Brothers leadership of choosing Netflix for ideological reasons despite Paramount's higher offer. Gaetz even suggests this may be a breach of fiduciary duty, implying that WBD executives prioritize progressive alignment over shareholder value. Well, either way, yes, this is true. You got to explain this math. And, Netflix says, hey, you're taking on more debt, Paramount. Yeah. But your stock's in decline. If true, it could trigger a wave of scrutiny and possible litigation. It already has. So with Netflix's offer under fire from both investors and the Trump-aligned political base, the tide may be turning. Paramount Skydance's strategy of staying quiet and letting Netflix implode, Plan D, may prove to be their smartest move yet, as Trump signals a willingness to intervene. The Netflix-WBD merger could soon find itself in the DOJ or the FTC's crosshairs. And if that happens, all bets are off. It was always the case, though. Trump posting it stirs it up a little more, but nevertheless, the department and the antitrust laws are there. I mean, it's a part of the government's interest in this, and you got to pass, that labyrinth as well, when you consider these mergers. And it's starting to look like a bigger stumbling block than Netflix would have anyone believe. So Paramount Skydance may still get the last laugh with help from the former president. Huh? He's president right now. Well, anyway, update. Yes, Paramount has filed a lawsuit which seeks to force Warner Brothers Discovery to disclose financial details on the Netflix deal. WBD has failed to include any disclosure about how it valued the global network's stub equity, how it valued the overall Netflix transaction, how the purchase price reduction for debt works in the Netflix transaction, or even what the basis is for its risk adjustment of our $30 per share all-cash offer. Paramount Chairman and CEO David Ellison wrote in an open letter to WBD shareholders. Yeah, that's true. Because again, even a layman idiot like me can see that $30, all cash, not combination of cash and stock, is more than 27. I mean, yeah, sure, the stock could suddenly skyrocket for some odd reason, and then it might surpass $30 per share. But up front, you get the $30 if you go with Paramount. So, all right, let's take a look at the lawsuit. Yeah. So yes, Paramount is suing WBD. So the Paramount versus Netflix battle for Warner Brothers Discovery just escalated into a legal and shareholder war. Well, the shareholder war was already declared, I would say, because, hostile takeover and all that. But anyway, Paramount Skydance Corporation officially filed a lawsuit against Warner Brothers Discovery in Delaware Chancery Court, accusing the WBD board of withholding critical financial information from shareholders as it pushes forward with a controversial $27.75 per share Netflix deal. Hey, you got to explain that math. Yeah? So let's take a look. Anyway, the lawsuit is part of a multi-front offensive as Paramount moves aggressively to force the board's hand and bring its superior $30 per share all-cash offer directly to investors. In an open letter to the Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders, Paramount CEO David Ellison outlined an aggressive new strategy to push forward the $30 all-cash offer. Paramount has filed a lawsuit demanding the WBD disclose key financial details about the Netflix deal, including how the $3 spinoff equity is valued and the impact of transferring debt on shareholder payouts. At the same time, Paramount plans to nominate a new slate of directors for election at WBD's 2026 annual meeting. Directors who would be committed to exercising WBD's right to engage with Paramount's offer. If WBD calls a special meeting to vote on the Netflix merger, Paramount will launch a proxy fight to oppose the deal. Additionally, the company is proposing a bylaw amendment that would require any spinoff of WBD's global networks, including CNN, TNT, and Discovery, to receive shareholder approval. Ellison blasted WBD's board for refusing to even engage with Paramount. We remain perplexed that WBD never responded to our December 4th offer, nor traded markups of contracts with us. It just doesn't add up. Much like the math, the math, on how WBD continues to favor taking less than our $30 per share all-cash offer. The lawsuit accuses Warner Brothers Discovery of failing to disclose basic valuation metrics surrounding the Netflix transaction, such as the actual worth of the cable spinoff, how debt shifts affects payouts, and how the board risk-adjusted Paramount's offer. Under Delaware law, shareholders are entitled to clear financial information when evaluating competing bids. Paramount claims WBD is denying that. Well, yeah, I mean, if they got a good explanation of how 27 is better than 30, well, let's hear it. Anyway, the legal move follows weeks of public outcry and mounting pressure from investors and political figures, including President Trump, who recently reposted an article slamming Netflix's media monopoly and visions and backing Paramount's position. With this filing, Paramount has made one thing clear. It's not going away quietly. If the WBD board won't come to the table, Ellison and Redbird Capital will try to replace them. That would be hilarious if they pull that off and stop the Netflix merger from ever closing. WBD shareholders are now caught in a high-stakes battle for the future of one of Hollywood's most iconic companies. On one side is Netflix, promising a complex mix of cash, stock, and spin-off equity. Yeah, you really gotta show the numbers on that. Don't go for the 30. Stick with our 27 mix of all this maybe might be. On the other hand, Paramount offers clean cash at a higher price and backing of political heavyweights. So, oh boy. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't like any of this. It would have been better if Warner Brothers was still a healthy company, but it just isn't. This will be the third time it's been sold because of the failures in management of past ownership. I mean, Zaslav from Discovery's brought in just to polish this thing up and try to sell it. Well, that's underway, but it seems might be a little dishonest behind the scenes. I suspect some amount of shenanigans. Is it overtly political? I'm sure that weighs into some of it, of course, but ultimately probably gets a better deal personally and other members of the board as well, than the rest of the shareholders, and that's unethical, you know. And so you're really going to have to put the cards on the table to explain this, because this is odd. So between the two, it like I said, this is a terrible situation. It's the consequence of absolute arrogance and failure on the part of Warner Brothers that led it to this position. But between Netflix and Paramount, and not just for the political reasons, but Paramount seems to have a more sense of loyalty and interest in theatrical releases and that sort of thing. And so that makes it the better of the two. This Netflix thing, yeah, we'll put them in theaters for a while, and then that's going to end. You know, it's just, there's no real model for it. They haven't pursued it. They haven't really respected that. And I suspect it's just not going to happen. But with Paramount, especially since they've already announced they've got an aggressive plan for, I think they said 30 films a year and this sort of thing. And then if you add the Warner Brothers IP to that, that's even more. So it would be a lot of movies they intend to release in theaters. So that would be a great boost for the theaters and all that. And that would be preferable from my vantage point on this. But if it goes Netflix, the entirety of Warner Brothers IP, which is massive, is just gone from theatrical release. So, like I said, it's not a great situation, but it's much better if Paramount wins this. And look, I'm seeing things here. I mean, just, you know, granted, I'm no financial expert on mergers and all that sort of thing, but just the basics here, something don't smell right about the Netflix deal. So, yeah, I'm Team Paramount. You know, maybe it's a default setting, but nevertheless, hopefully they pull this out and win it. It'd be preferable if they were able to do it before the regulatory shenanigans happen and all that. Because even if it's all on the up and it's by law and not just political gamesmanship, which, you know, it's always the case, but it's, you know, it's really going to hang over it going forward and all that. So it'd be much better if they're successful at just winning this outright. And I mean, the lawsuit, discovery and all that, that might do the trick. Because, again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It seems a lot more risk with the Netflix deal than with the Paramount one. Anyway, that's what I'm saying about it. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned for the saga of WBD bidding war.